As we get started with the second panel, I just wanted to welcome a couple of our hardworking local folks who are all about bringing jobs to the region, and that is, I don't think they're in the room right now, Nina Moore and Cindy Bonnier, who are both here from the Fremont Chamber of Commerce. So I want to thank them for being here today and talk about partnerships. The Fremont Chamber has been a big help to Assemblymember Wykowski and I. They always step in and help lobby on some of this important legislation that we've been talking about today. So we want to thank them for their support and their advocacy. So with that, we will introduce the second panel today. Thank you all for being here. This panel will be talking about developing the industry in California. What have we done? What more can we do? So Bob and I will be all ears on that. Joining us today is Christina Briggs with the City of Fremont. She's the Economic Development Manager, another great partner of ours. Thank you. Jean Clinton, Special Advisor to the Governor for Energy Efficiency, California Public Utilities Commission. Thank you. And Scott Green, Clean Technology Officer, City of San Jose. And Robert Oglesby, Executive Director of the California Energy Commission. Thanks for having you all here today, and please go ahead with your presentations.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Senator Corbett and Assemblymember Wykowski, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today. And also thank you to Solaria for hosting this event, one of our shining stars in the city of Fremont. So we appreciate that. It's an important conversation. So I thought I would just help provide a little bit of the local perspective on behalf of the city of Fremont, basically what our profile in terms of clean technology is, as well as our approach to how we support the growth of the sector. In Fremont, we do consider ourselves extremely lucky to have captured some of the tremendous growth that's occurred in clean technology over the last several years. Today, the city is home to nearly 30 clean technology companies, and about half of them are in the solar space, just to give you an idea. Our city council and our executive staff have been extremely supportive of encouraging this sector and doing what we can. We have limited resources at the city's disposal, but doing what we can to support this industry. Some of the companies that, as I mentioned, of the 30, some of them actually do manufacturing in Fremont, and so that's a very encouraging trend for us. In Fremont, we do consider ourselves somewhat of a capital for tech manufacturing in the Bay Area with our real estate inventory. We have about a 40 million square foot industrial base, and a lot of that is R&D and manufacturing space. That said, of that 40 million square foot base, clean tech at this point represents about 4% of that base total. So it's a relatively small proportion. But because we are watching this industry sector evolve, we're also seeing firsthand a lot of the variables that affect the industry and the dynamics of green technology. And some of these that we've witnessed include international competition, design choices of the different firms and technologies, future demand for the products, and the future of viability of manufacturing, like we've been discussing in some of the other conversations. Ultimately, clean technology remains a very important piece of Fremont's multi-pronged strategy for economic vitality, which includes other technology and other emerging technology sectors. We believe, though, that the city is uniquely positioned within the Bay Area and within the state to help the industry flourish and grow based on access to talent and, like I mentioned, competitive leasing rates and real estate inventory. So what are we doing to support the growth specifically? We kind of break these functions down into three categories, mainly helping to save time and money, recognizing how critical speed to market is for these newer companies, technical expertise, and focused outreach. Under the category of helping to save time and money, specifically as part of a broader business stimulus package that our city council adopted in 2009, we did implement a clean technology business tax exemption, which Assemblymember Wykowski is familiar with, that is specific to clean technology businesses engaged in R&D or manufacturing of those types of products, and it exempts businesses from their business tax for up to 5 years. We also implemented impact fee reductions, and that was actually across the board for anybody coming in and doing any kind of construction project or to outfit a new facility. Their fees were reduced. Of course, we have tried to maintain and work very hard to continue to maintain streamlined permitting. The earlier keynote speaker talked about the difficulty of the permitting process and the inconsistency, and I really appreciated the point. We've tried to make it as quick and easy as possible. Certainly our Office in Economic Development tries to help act as a liaison to facilitate that process. And we also have worked very hard to help with site selection, which sometimes is underestimated in its value. You know, companies that we talk to continually are looking for something very particular, and it's not always the exact same thing. And so learning our real estate inventory in our local community and knowing what areas make sense has really actually added value to that search for a lot of the newer companies. So in technical expertise, the reason I bring this up is because as you do develop this natural cluster that forms in your community, you do start to understand what their needs are. You start to learn their specific needs. And you know, an example of this is the hazardous materials that clean technology companies use are different from the semiconductor industry, for example. And so our fire department has become particularly astute in how to handle those and has actually had great success working with companies where what they're proposing may not have worked in a facility, but the fire staff has been able to work with them to propose changes or, you know, make something so that it will work where they're trying to locate. And just generally in the area of zoning, understanding the growth that this sector is experiencing and mainly in Fremont, making sure we protect and preserve areas for these companies to come in. It's actually more of a challenge than people realize. If you don't really strategically protect that industrial area, you know, where companies that are using hazardous materials can locate without having conflicts with other users, that in and of itself is really valuable too, because it's so often that, you know, a company finds a building but there's a daycare next door or something, and there's conflicts with those uses. So we try to be very proactive in that regard in Fremont. And then finally, focused outreach, like I mentioned, you know, the city has definitely engaged in marketing campaigns, and we participated in industry trade shows, you know, Intersolar, things like that. We actually do staff at those shows, trying to reach out to the industry, letting them know that we're there, that the region's here. And just a small note, you know, the city in a relatively large national conference last year, the International City Management Association, the city was highlighted in a video called Clean, Green, and Ready for the Future, really highlighting Fremont as a home to emerging technologies, and we were really proud of that. So then the next question that you've asked is, you know, what else can be done? And I thought I would just bring up a couple points. One is something we're already starting to engage in, but is to really build on our regional approach. You know, this is not just a Fremont-specific issue. You know, we want to encourage the growth of the sector in the region and in the state of California in general. We're committed to that too. And so we work really closely in some different regional collaborations, Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance or the East Bay Economic Development Alliance, since we straddle those two regions, to talk about projects where we can facilitate a better regional conversation and how we grow the industry regionally, talking about permitting across the region so that you don't experience something different in every city that you go to. So those are really important points, and we're trying to increase that dialogue. And in addition, the Innovation Hub that California has designated across the state, Fremont is participating in one of those as well, which is another collaboration of cities focused on emerging technology. And the other point I wanted to make in terms of what else can be done has to do with a strategy particular to Fremont, but has to do with a strategy that we have in regard to our South Fremont Warm Springs area. This is the southern area of the city that really represents a really unique convergence of forces. It's 850 acres. It's where the majority of our industrial area is located, over 3,000 acres. And the convergence of forces that I was talking about includes the extension of BART further into Silicon Valley, the new Warm Springs station, which is opening in 2015, and proximity to major employers, including Tesla Motors, as well as some significant stock of vacant industrial land, some of the largest in the area. And so the city is actively working on studies that are federally funded, and we're continuing to elevate the dialogue at the federal level as well as the state level about what can be done to continue to bolster the promise of this area in terms of being a designated area for employment-focused, transit-oriented development, but specifically, with the potential for a major emerging technology center. And so that's a very exciting prospect for the city, and we're committed to working hard on that. So the last point I would make is that, we continue to improve our focus on process. Many of the clean tech companies that we work with closely are startup mode completely, and it's a challenge to navigate not only the city process, but any process. They're a new business, really, and so we really try to help facilitate coordination, whether it's just through our own permitting process or other outside agencies, just trying to be a real man on the ground in the trenches with them. It sounds sort of silly, but at the local level, that's really what they need, and that's what you need to do. So certainly, we support initiatives at the state level that are going to continue to help grow this sector. It holds tremendous promise for Fremont, but for the region as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Briggs. And Assemblymember Wykowski and I are very glad to continue to work with you and help you on your efforts as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clinton.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit more about sort of inside baseball today than we sometimes get to talk about at the legislature in Sacramento. I'm representing both the governor's office and the PUC. I'm sort of embedded at the PUC in my role. And in the amount of time we have, I wanted to focus on just a couple of maybe 4 topics, sort of the world in which we're operating in California, the strategies the Public Utilities Commission is able to call upon to try to advance clean technology, particularly clean energy technology, just reference the market size, and talk a little bit at the end about jobs. So just briefly, I assume that most people know that the PUC oversees investor-owned utilities. So that means that we have jurisdiction over about 70% of the electricity use in the state, about 99% of the natural gas use, and only about 25% of the water. But some people don't know that we also regulate water companies. So I just want to put that in perspective. The kinds of, the PUC does not invest directly in companies. That's a lot of the conversation today has been about direct investment. But what the PUC does is create demand for market opportunities for the private sector to deliver solutions. And so I see the job of the PUC as creating market demand, setting long-term sort of milestones or targets, creating a clear sense of direction, and hopefully creating at least the sense that there's at least 10-year horizons for business opportunities for investment in products, solutions, services that are needed here in the California market. So we don't dictate tax policy or sales tax exemptions and waivers, but we do try to create the scale. And just to put a perspective on scale, the renewable portfolio standard that's targeting 33% renewables, in terms of the investor-owned utility area, we talk in terms of energy, 13,000, 16,000 megawatts of new investment that we need in the energy supply. But I was trying to do a translation. What does that mean? It's about, if you assume $4 a watt, $50 billion that needs to be invested primarily in renewable resources that are in or near California, just in that space. For energy efficiency, again, we're estimating that there's about $50 billion, give or take 20 or 30 billion, depending on how deep we can go into buildings and factories, of investment that is cost-effective and that we need to happen. On the scale of customer generation, whether it's solar PV or fuel cells, or we probably need $20 to $30 billion of investment to occur. In smart grid, we're just getting started, but we're anticipating $3 to $5 billion worth of investment. And that's not counting all the sort of added value software and services and solutions that we're expecting are going to come along with that. And then in the electric vehicle market, obviously, we don't influence what actually gets manufactured vehicle-wise, but we are influencing the ability of the grid to do the charging for that fleet of vehicles. So the PUC has a role in influencing the right policies, the right incentives, and some of the right sort of technology deployment for a fairly substantial scale of investment in clean tech solutions in California. So the kinds of strategies that the PUC uses are, one, after the Energy Commission's sort of R&D work, we take over with sort of deploying the emerging technologies, the commercialization, more the demonstrations, the deployment readiness, both for solar technologies and for energy efficiency in particular. Secondly, we set the targets for the scale of investments that are going to occur in the different areas that I've already mentioned. So for the most part, we're setting 10-year targets, which I think is helpful in terms of mobilizing investment and production and business sort of preparation for delivering those solutions. We set up the procurement mechanisms that the utilities are going to use to sign the contracts for the renewables. We set incentives that reduce some of the first cost barriers for things like solar PV and customer generation and distributed generation and energy efficiency. And we sort of micromanage a little bit in terms of what are some of the market facilitation strategies and tools that need to be in place to ensure that we're rewarding quality and we're rewarding performance on these technologies. And not just maybe 10 years ago, the emphasis was, well, we'll just give you X% of the cost. But now we will say, no, we're going to pay you based on performance. So we want to make sure that these technologies are solid and they're going to be around for a while. In terms of some of the newer what are sort of the newer areas that the PUC, I think, is going to focus on going forward? We're going to, on the R&D side, our first and foremost priority is to get continued commitment of funding for the Public Interest Energy Research Program and the renewables area, since the public goods charge didn't get renewed. So we've already initiated a proceeding and are anticipating at least funding decisions before the end of the year, and then next year focusing more on some of the targeted areas for investment. Second, we've, in the area of electric vehicles and renewable distributed generation, we're looking at what are the sort of roles that we think utilities should play versus markets should play. And one of the underlying themes in what the PUC does is how do we encourage maximum creativity, innovation in the marketplace? How do we bring, or not that we bring them, but we enable or allow new business models to emerge and thrive? And that's one of the sort of philosophical themes as a regulator, is allowing these markets to evolve and emerge. And I think that the newest area that you're going to see the PUC focusing on is in financing of energy efficiency. How can we bring private capital solutions into the energy efficiency space in a way that perhaps hasn't been there? It's not an isolated tool. It needs to be done in hand with technical quality issues and labor markets and performance, but we do think that bringing more capital and innovative business solutions that come with it can help make deeper penetration and inroads into the efficiency space. I think, we're not the world's experts on doing modeling of the jobs impacts and implications of all this investment, but we do look at the university studies and the labor studies, and there's no doubt that I think California is and could and can expect tens of thousands of jobs to be available in sort of whether we call them green jobs or clean tech jobs or clean energy jobs. They're there. And a lot of these jobs are at the construction and installation and marketing scales. They're not all R&D, PhD kinds of jobs. So I think they're the kinds of jobs that we need in the California marketplace. And what I've tried to do is sort of just convey this sense of the PUC as sort of not just, a regulator that looks at costs and electric and gas rates, but is sort of a strategic player in trying to influence the way investments in needed energy solutions are going to bring us to sort of both the environmental and economic aims and visions for the future that we have.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Very happy to hear that you're moving forward despite the fact that the PEER program didn't make it through the legislature this year. So happy to hear you're going to do what you can to help replace that, and we'll continue working on that as well at the legislature. And also just wanted to mention, I'm very happy to hear your focus on electric vehicles. That's obviously very important to our local economy with our Tesla plant and making sure that people have a place to charge their cars once they're manufactured here in Fremont. So thank you very much for that. Mr. Green.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. San Jose's primary focus in supporting the ongoing growth of existing clean tech companies, as well as supporting and working with the advanced startup infrastructure in Silicon Valley, is, we hope, well chronicled. The Assembly member mentioned it to me on the break, that San Jose and Silicon Valley broadly has a get-to-it attitude. Over 95% of our job creation stems from expansion of existing companies and the birth of new ones. We work on the demand side and on the supply side to support clean tech job growth. Implementation of our green vision, demonstration of emerging technologies, strengthening connections to innovation assets, and traditional economic development tools are among the areas the city is active in. On the demand side, San Jose adopted our green vision and environmental and economic development framework to spur growth in the sector. Its 10 ambitious goals over a 15-year period: renewable energy targets, 50% per capita reduction in energy use, the build or retrofit of over 50 million square feet of green buildings, the retrofit of our street light infrastructure to next generation LED controllable street lights. There's 62,000 street lights in the inventory, the conversion of waste to energy, and creation of 25,000 clean tech jobs. We're moving the needle on our goals and measuring our progress annually, leading by example with our infrastructure. Examples include commercial side LED retrofits, EV infrastructure upgrades, over 1.4 million square feet of LEED certified municipal buildings. Recently, our council authorized the execution of solar power purchase agreements for 28 municipal sites. Over 2 megawatts was installed at San Jose's International Airport and Central Service Yard just this year, and an RFP for 2,000 next-generation LED streetlights that I referenced earlier will be coming to council in the fall. We continue to upgrade our infrastructure through grants and other finance tools that don't require general fund obligations. They actually free up general fund obligations and deliver environmental economic benefits to our city. Also want to mention that we work collaboratively with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. I know Mike Milkey's on a follow-up panel, the Bay Area Climate Collaborative, Solar Tech, and Joint Venture Silicon Valley as market accelerator partners, the best type of agitators that a large city can have, that work at a regional level, work with deep collaboration with our corporate partners. And so they work to explore innovation in finance, aggregated procurement models. Certainly Solar Tech works on all balance of system cost issues with respect to solar inspection and permitting and streamlining of those efforts. On the supply side, there are certainly opportunities for companies to receive help. You've heard it already today. We wish there was more. It's a reality that we work in. But there are areas that we've, I think, pioneered new ways of thinking. One of them is that we work with clean tech companies on demonstration and field trials for emerging technologies. And we hear often from companies of all stages of maturity that this is gold for them. The story goes proof of concept, access to capital, and an opportunity to scale. And so we've, in a limited fashion, opened our buildings and lands and our processes to be catalytic in this way. Truth and data moments that demonstrate the efficacy of the technology, the payback period, install hurdles, working with facility managers and fleet managers and getting real-time feedback of what public side marketplaces are looking for. I recently heard from a venture capital firm, a notable one, that said just having the conversation is critically important to these companies. If it ends up in a field trial, that's tremendous. But having that conversation with local government people to understand where there are marketplace gaps is something that we routinely hear. San Jose has conducted a number of demonstration projects, including EV charging stations. Column's first EV charging station was installed across the street from City Hall. Their proof of concept, it led to some $37 million of Department of Energy and California Energy Commission money to move their charging stations into 9 communities across America, as an example. We've done commercial LED lighting and solar projects as well. Across the street from City Hall, we're Solar America City, DOE funded a clean energy showcase where there are 16 technologies being demonstrated of all stages of maturity, some that have come out of an incubator, some that are household names like SunPower and NanoSolar. And so having that opportunity to do that and raise education and awareness right across the street from City Hall, where delegations from around the world come and visit routinely to Silicon Valley and to see these companies, we think is a good thing. Connections to innovation assets is another area where we're very active. And my colleague from Fremont mentioned we're in the trenches, we're on the ground. And Silicon Valley has a tremendous innovation ecosystem, risk capital, human capital, proximity to national labs, early adopting marketplace, existing high-tech clusters, convergence of technologies that are flowing across those clusters, state and local governments that set out ambitious goals for staff and companies to pursue. And so we make connections for companies along these channels. Some call them channel strategies, introductions, but that is a routine part of our job. Manufacturing, in the earlier panel, there's a discussion of the siting of R&D and pilot line, and we hear that a lot from our companies. A bit of an untold story, I think, is the role that contract manufacturers play for a lot of clean tech companies in Silicon Valley. There's an enormous capacity in place to offer design, engineering, and manufacture expertise for new product introductions. Sanmina, as an example, has 5 sites for new product introduction located in San Jose and is headquartered there as well. And through conversation with their vice president of global, which they're in 18 countries with 45,000 employees, but headquartered in San Jose, they indicated that they did 30 new product introductions from renewable energy to energy efficiency technologies, fuel cell, EV infrastructure, and the list goes on. And so finding ways to connect entrepreneurs and early stage companies to all of the assets that are in Silicon Valley, as well as with local governments that can help them navigate and connect and make introductions through this ecosystem is an area where we're very active.
So, I'm sorry, are you done? Go ahead.
And I would just say that through that conversation, too, we've heard that there's a little bit of a concern on succession planning because there's a lot of expertise located in these manufacturing sites. And a lot of people have sort of asked the question, if we're going to lead in new product introduction as we have, how do we pass that knowledge forward? Finally, I'll just say that there's a number of things that we do as a matter of course that are very, very important to our companies: financial and tax incentives, support for incubators and accelerators in the region that offer lab space, equipment, training, and commercialization support broadly, workforce assistance, site selection assistance that was referenced already, and expedited permit review, which we bring a range of our departments together on one day to be able to move as quickly as we can for these companies, because time to market is critical for them in all ways. So I see my time's up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Green, it sounds like you've covered all the bases. So I want to thank you. I think one thing people don't realize is how important the work of local city economic development directors and offices are in bringing, business to the local community, and also being there to be an ear for local business to help work on streamlining and permit processes and all those things. So my congratulations to both of you and what you're doing on behalf of your cities. Thank you. Mr. Oglesby.
Thank you, Senator Corbett, Assemblymember Wachowski. It's great to be here. In fact, I want to compliment the committee on holding this event locally so that you could have the opportunity to have many of the investors and innovators that have, in fact, it's extremely gratifying to hear the positive stories that have come from the companies that have been co-panelists here, and it's an honor to appear with them and to hear that many of the Energy Commission's programs have played a role in their success today. So thank you for having this, providing this opportunity.
Once in a while, we do good things, and we get to see, our projects, take great shape.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. The Energy Commission adopts and implements policies that promote investments in clean and green technology with an emphasis on renewable energy. Renewable energy spurs innovation, creates employment, and provides sustainable, clean energy. The Energy Commission also invests in research that develops new energy resources, grid management, energy storage, and efficiency, much of which you've heard of today. Finally, the Energy Commission provides direct financial assistance in the form of grants and loans for efficiency and innovative and emerging energy business and local governments. Let me mention a few highlights, beginning with a program that infuses about $90 million annually to foster improvements in the transportation sector. And I know that you're well aware of this program, the Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program, also known as AB 118. I know you're very familiar with this. The program is designed to help California businesses and entrepreneurs develop the next generation of alternative fuels and to commercialize new types of vehicles. Beginning in 2009, the Energy Commission has invested more than $198 million in alternative and renewable vehicle technology, fuel, and infrastructure. In 2010 alone, the Energy Commission used $36.5 million of these funds to help California companies successfully receive a total of $218.6 million in underfunding. Some of that's ARA, some of that's leveraging private investment funds. And as you've already heard, the importance of our public interest research and development program, which was related to the public goods charge discussed earlier. Since 1996, the Energy Commission has invested more than $700 million in public interest research, development, and demonstration through its peer program, and has attracted more than $510 million in federal and private funding, not including ARA. In 2010, the Energy Commission invested $21 million in public interest research funds that was matched with more than $500 million in ARA federal stimulus. This $21 million also leveraged more than $900 million in private venture funding. We've discussed a bit about renewable energy power plants. As of 2010, California has more than 9,000 megawatts of renewable energy generating capacity, with nearly 6,000 megawatts of utility-scale generation. In 2010, in-state and out-of-state renewable electric generation facilities provided 39,796 gigawatts of renewable energy for California consumption. As of September 2011, the Energy Commission has licensed 9 solar thermal power plants for 4,193 megawatts of generating capacity. These facilities represent an estimated $15.8 billion in capital investments and $1.8 billion in construction payroll. California and the Energy Commission also provide a lot of funding for training in green and clean technologies. California has the largest, and this is through ARA funding, California has the largest green workforce development program in the nation, investing almost $80 million in the Clean Energy Workforce Training Program. And community colleges, local training agencies, and private organizations offer training in different technology and clean energy industry programs, including energy, water efficiency, building retrofits, renewable energy systems, biofuel production, and clean vehicle technology. The program has trained more than 8,200 individuals who now have skills and greater employment opportunities than before. Almost 40% of these newly trained are employed in the clean tech industry. Energy Upgrade California, also an ARA-supported program, is a one-stop clearinghouse that is helping Californians do more for less money and encouraging property owners and contractors to take advantage of energy efficiency information, incentives, rebates, and financing options. The $113 million in these funds go to many residential and commercial projects under the Energy Upgrade Program. More than $1.2 billion from a variety of funding sources is leveraged through the Energy Upgrade California, including rebates and incentives. And the Energy Commission's partners include the Public Utilities Commission, utilities, local governments, non-governmental organizations, and the private sector. Other Energy Commission funding programs, over the last dozen years, California has invested $2 billion in the clean energy economy with manufacturing incentives and consumer rebates. These include the California Solar Initiative, which offers cash back for installing PV on homes or businesses, and that's administered by the Energy Commission and the PUC. The Emerging Renewables Program is used to help foster development of emerging renewable technologies, including solar, wind, and fuel cells. I guess in closing, to answer your question is what's the most important thing to do to help this would be to continue the programs that were established under the Public Goods Charge and for which the Public Utilities Commission has initiated their rulemaking to keep the funds flowing. We think it's a very important program and has been supported by many of your witnesses today, and we concur in that.
Yes. And Assemblymember Bob Wachowski and I agree with you. Thank you. Very impressive list of accomplishments by the Energy Commission. Thank you. I think we have a couple of questions, and we're going to try to keep on schedule. Did you have a question?
I have a question.
Why don't you go ahead?
Question for Gene. Earlier this week, I read the New York Times that the total cleanup cost for the Fukushima power plant is going to be $13 billion, which, if you work it out, is basically $270 a watt. So, in other words, you can install utility-scale solar at the price that it costs just for the cleanup. I don't know what the cleanup cost, for the natural gas pipeline explosion in San Bruno is, but I'm just wondering, what is the mechanism by which California can kind of price or monetize the risk reduction when renewable projects get deployed? Because there is, there's not a risk of an explosion or a nuclear meltdown with wind and solar projects. We talked about there is a carbon price coming on, but this just on the risk. Do you see a mechanism for that to be priced into the energy?
Well, I think the simple answer is yes, there's a mechanism. The question is, what's the value of the data input that you want to put into it? We have the ability to do any kind of economic analysis with societal values that can include environmental risk management. The question is assigning probability to these costs and factoring it in. So the simple answer is yes, it's possible. It can be done in the context of siting of power plants at the Energy Commission. It can be done in the context of energy procurement planning. It can be done in the context of legislation that looks at, do we want to shift policies? What's the magnitude of risk and who bears that risk? And I think, quite frankly, we're pretty good at factoring in right now, implied societal value of greenhouse gas reduction, or looking at air quality and water quality. I think the longer term risks of ocean levels rising and cleanup of nuclear and that sort of thing are, next stage options. But the simple answer is the mechanisms are there. It's more a question of getting agreement on these values.
Is that something that makes sense to start looking at as far as figuring out the value or the cost of that? And some of the decisions that we make and using our precious state funding?
Yeah. I think there's any number of issues that can be investigated. And I think I would actually, not to punt, but to defer to the Energy Commission in terms of its role with the Integrated Energy Policy Report, which does take that sort of long-term view of what are the big issues facing California and how do we factor that into our energy policy. And I think that's probably the right forum to make trade-offs of a dozen different issues, including ones through cooling and other factors. What are the different risks and probabilities, and how do we sort of balance those in our decision making?
Did you want to respond to that as well?
I was so glad that Jean had the question. I don't know how to do the math, but I think I understand the underlying point you're making with the question, and it's clearly important to recognize the wisdom of the policies that you establish. We have a 2-year planning cycle on the integrated energy planning report, but the fact of the matter is that the policy directions that are taken try to recognize the different risks and benefits of the energy resources, which go beyond those of just calamity. They go into whether it's sustainable, what the impacts are on the environment, and there are trade-offs that need to be made. But I think it's clear that targeting renewables as a priority and efficiency as a priority are important ways to recognize and drive the energy development in the state.
Thank you. I have one additional question, and that is with regard to, and you were talking about it, the training and education of folks for these new technologies, which you play a role in providing funding for that training. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and tell us maybe whether there are other things that the legislature could be helpful on focusing on to make sure we continue to have the workforce that supports these innovative companies? And I'm also particularly interested whether any of your programs focus on providing funding for programs where we can retrain workers who may be displaced in this economy to then work in some of these, cutting-edge technology companies.
Absolutely. We've invested a great deal of funds that have been made available to us primarily through the ARA program and channeled them through community colleges and other programs. Some of them have gone to help train folks to do things like home retrofits, where you have a different skill set that's involved, and others are through advanced clean tech education through other programs. So I think it's critical to have a funding source to be able to do that. And we've worked through California Conservation Corps, with the community colleges and local governments, as well as providing training through the employment training panel that has trained some of the employees working in the high-tech industry in this area.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I guess you mentioned, Ms. Clinton, the $50 billion for the PUC's looking for energy efficiency. And earlier we had a hearing in Sacramento, and energy efficiency just doesn't have the sex appeal that solar energy has, or nano solar, or some of these other things. Do you have any suggestions, or how do we, because there's a lot of savings and potential there, and it helps us with green jobs and green economy. Those should not be discounted. Do you have, from your perspective on the PUC?
Yeah, I think if you were to ask either the PUC or the Energy Commission, we'd probably have similar answers. And you're right. There's not much sex appeal with energy efficiency, and you can't see it. You can see your bill go down, but it definitely puts efficiency at a disadvantage. And I think to drive this market and to make it real, we need to focus not so much on all the neat whiz-bang solutions like, window glass that's going to, shift in color and things like that. But what we have to focus on is performance and value. And so I think that really says we need to put a lot more emphasis on building ratings and getting buildings rated, whether it's a home or a business, getting these ratings sort of visible and understood, and creating market demand for having a well-rated building, a green building or a 5-star building or an Energy Star building. And, what the system is less important. But what we have to do is create a demand for, I want that. And then we have to have the infrastructure to deliver it. And the business owner or the tenant or the homeowner doesn't necessarily need to or want to know all the gadgets and gizmos and solutions that go into making a building energy efficient or the appliances and the equipment energy efficient. What they need to know is that they bought or got something that's well rated. End of story. Let other people deal with the details. And so I think that's really talking about how do we create visible sign that something is efficient, and how do we create market demand to want that? I'm not going to go to the question of, voluntary versus mandatory. I know we usually end up having that conversation, and nobody likes to hear about mandatory, but I think we could start with a market-based system where we're making this visible. They do it in Europe. Buildings have visible rating systems. I've worked overseas internationally. Thailand has a very aggressive, simple appliance rating system, and everybody wants a 5-star appliance. Nobody wants a 3-star appliance. So, create market demand.
That's great.
Nobody wants to have the last inefficient building built, right? We always want to.
That's right.
Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause for this excellent panel. Thank you all very much. We are still running a little bit behind, but we will have the third panel come forward. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and we will be right back. Thank you all very much.